Welcome to Andy's Personal Development, the place for transactional conversations. During these conversations, we'll discover intentionality and clarity, and of course, purpose. Now, here is your host, Andy Anderson Charles. And we are live and welcome to Transactional Conversations. It's the place for intentionality, clarity, and purpose. I am your host, Andy Anderson Charles, and we are live, a production of Andy's Personal Development. This episode is entitled The Six Pillars of Effective Leadership with Jim Carlough, and he is our guest currently at the moment. He is an author, a professional speaker, and a leadership expert with over 30 years of leadership experience. He's an accomplished business strategist, speaker, and of course, author, having successfully driven explosive growth for healthcare organizations from startups to industry leaders. Jim is also a trusted expert in building high performing teams, revitalizing underperforming businesses, and guiding organizations through transformational change. His core competency or philosophy is leaders aren't born, they are developed, and it challenges the myth of innate leadership in his book, The Six Pillars of Effective Leadership, a roadmap to success. Now, without any further ado, let's introduce our guest, Jim Carlough. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Andy, I am so happy to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us, and we are more happy to have you here, and we appreciate you and what you're about to share with us and our audience. So, tell us, Jim, in terms of the life that you have had and the success, obviously, that you have been able to achieve and accomplish, if you were to describe what you have done in one sentence or two, what would you say?
I have exceeded every expectation my parents ever had for me.
I love that. What a wonderful note to begin this particular conversation and episode on. We appreciate that and we're rooting for you, Joe. Thank you so much. Now, in terms of finding your calling in life, your expertise, when did you realize that you had the ability to write, to speak, and also be a leader in business strategy? When did that happen? What is the moment like that, if you can recall, and share the details with us?
I think if I look back, um, so a lot of success comes from tragedy.
Right.
And when I was a second grader, 8 years old, we had a family tragedy where my brother was killed in the Vietnam War. My
Wow.
dad was a former military person who had served in the Army in World War II. My brother was drafted, and that was a devastating event for our family. From that, now my brother had gone into into a trade, much like my dad was. My dad was a carpenter, and so because he didn't go to college, he was eligible to be drafted, and he was. From that, my parents did a 380 or a 360 and told the three younger children, you will not have a choice. You will go to college. And
Wow.
made sure that we knew that was going to happen. Now, we didn't grow up with money, and we didn't have leaders in our family that ran companies sort of like to the level that I'm at today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from those early learnings and my parents' expectations that really got me focused on it. And how it started was in high school, sitting in a history class where the small community I grew up in once a year elected a student to be mayor and other positions within the town, and they ran the town for one whole day.
Okay.
And I was sitting in history class, and they were looking for somebody to nominate to run.
Mm-hmm.
And Tracy, who sat next to me, said, "You need to run." And I said, "No, I don't need to run." She said, "Yeah, you do."
Mm-hmm.
And I ran and I won.
Okay.
5 years later, or 4 years later, 5 years later, after the year I graduated college, I ran for the city council in that small town and I won.
Wow. Yes.
And so that's where it began.
Wonderful. I love the story. I love the story. It's intriguing. Thank you for sharing, Jim. What would you describe as the main catalyst behind your style of writing?
So I never looked at myself as being a writer,
Mm-hmm.
but I've done a lot of, I guess I do a fair amount of writing in what I do.
Yeah.
And I've been doing mentoring of other professionals for the last 25 years. And I found a common theme with all of them, or most of them, the majority
Okay.
of them. They
Mm-hmm.
were very smart people, but they didn't understand humans
Hmm.
or how
Yeah.
to relate to them and how to deal with their emotions.
Yeah.
And so a year ago, little over a year ago, I said, I've been talking about these characteristics for a long time. I need to probably try to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a little bit different. I wanted the book to be truly real. And people who know me who have read it have said, when I'm reading those words, I can see you saying word for word in that book,
All right.
which to me was a huge accomplishment. That
Yeah.
meant I succeeded in being able to write a book that people could read, that they could understand. And I used personal stories in each of the pillars that we talk about. And then I
Mm-hmm.
also do two other things. In each chapter, I give references to other corporate leaders in America who use that characteristic in their management style. So not only are they saying, okay, well, who's Jim Carlough? But I have people like Warren Buffett highlighted. I have
Yes.
people like Jeff Bezos highlighted. I have
Mm-hmm.
people like Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella highlighted. And so now people can make a correlation to other business leaders and they can read and learn about them as well, because I give references in the book as well. And also,
Wonderful.
in
Mm-hmm.
many of
Go
the
ahead.
sections, I also give, a small idea of how they can implement, understanding that pillar or that pillar in their own life.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Jim. Now let's look at the pillars, and you describe it as the six pillars of effective leadership. Could you just go us through in details what these pillars are and what do they represent for effective leadership?
Okay. Pillar number one,
Mm-hmm.
integrity.
Yeah.
It is critically important for a leader to go down the center of the road with every decision that they make and every interaction. If you don't do that, you will not have the trust of your team. You will alienate the team, and they will see that inconsistency in you and will not trust you as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, integrity is non negotiable.
Right.
The next, after integrity, is compassion. You have to have compassion for your fellow humans, men or women. You have to be able to help them in a time of need. From compassion, we go to empathy. Empathy and compassion are two very different things. Empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and then allowing that to guide your actions with them. The fifth pillar, I'm sorry, the fourth pillar is
Fourth. Yeah.
focus. Is focus.
Okay. Yes.
The the fifth pillar is stability,
Mm-hmm.
and the sixth pillar is humor.
Yeah.
And I use all six of these in my leadership style on a daily basis. And it,
Wonderful.
and it has allowed me to build loyal, highly productive, and trusting teams.
Yeah. How did you come up with the cover of the publication, Jim? What prompted you to use this? It's really outstanding, actually.
So it was actually so a combination of a combination of um, an editor that I used, my
Mm-hmm.
wife,
Yeah.
um, and I like the color blue, and I look good in blue, so
Yes.
I wanted a picture of blue, and I wanted it to be, I have pictures of me with my arms folded in different stances, but I wanted it to be somewhat business casual, no tie.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, the walking with the coat, the casual look, the smile, really in a way to hopefully have people look at it and say, okay, this guy's pretty casual. He looks pretty cool. He doesn't look uptight.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the intent, and I think we pulled that off.
Yeah. Wonderful. Congratulations on that. I understand the focus. I So, for a leader who is viewing or listening to what you are doing and saying for the first time, and they're struggling with many areas of the six pillars that you have outlined, how can you get them, Jim, to come to a place where they embrace not only the philosophy, but the practical application of these six pillars?
I think that's rather easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's two types of people that I think would be attracted to my book. One would be
Okay.
the up and coming person who has an opportunity to get into leadership but is apprehensive.
Okay.
Because taking my book and being able to implement it would be fairly easy and very helpful to someone just entering the management world. And for those people who have been in leadership, whether they have succeeded or failed, there is something in there for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in all my years, I don't, there's very few people who I think that I've interacted with who actually utilize all six of these pillars. I can think of one or two people,
Uh-huh.
but I think a lot of the people that even I was mentored by don't have all six. I have a lot of leaders that I've looked up to over the years who all had integrity, but I can point to two that didn't.
Mm.
And the difference in the organizational results are huge, are
Okay.
huge.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's look at the concept really in terms of your experience. Which one of the six pillars would you say is most often overlooked by leaders?
Empathy.
Ah,
And it is
and
and
why?
it is
Why is
something
that, Jim?
because it's hard. And I struggled
Ah,
with it. I struggled with it.
mhm,
But let me
mhm,
tell you a story. This is any story I tell is always truthful. I don't tell fake stories. I once
yeah.
worked for a company called Perot Systems, which was started by Ross Perot. And
Okay.
I had a team back in the mid 90s or I'm sorry, in the early 2000s
Hmm.
that for those people who are around in the 90s will remember green screen technology, right? Old technology, no mouse on the computer. And this team was responsible for maintaining and developing a piece of green screen technology. And I had to tell them, there's 25 or 30 people in the group, that we were going to sunset that technology. And I struggled. with how was I going to tell them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I really put my head to it and said, what would I be concerned with if my boss came and told me my job was going away tomorrow?
Yeah.
I'd be concerned about my income. I'd be
Hmm.
concerned about my family. And I started listing the concerns. So I went to the people and I promised them three things. The first thing I promised them is each individual, before they were told their job was going away, they would be given enough time to prepare. So if I knew that we were losing two customers on August 1st, and I knew it today, I would tell them, okay, Andy, your job's going away on August 1st. Now, what do we want to do? So let's get to the second promise. The second promise was between that day when I told them and the day what they would be told that their job was going away, I offered them an opportunity to learn the new technologies that we were building. And
Okay.
I would give them time to learn it and bring in the expertise to teach them so that they could transition from where they were over to the new technology if they wanted to continue in that path.
Hmm.
The third thing I promised them was if they didn't want to continue in that path, but they wanted to stay with the organization, I would personally help them find a job in the organization.
Wow.
And if they didn't want to work in the organization and they wanted to look on the outside, I would give them the time and I would personally help them get a job on the outside. Two things happened. The first one is I expected to happen, and I was hoping would happen, that nobody would quit before it was time for their job to go away. And nobody did. The second thing I didn't expect. For the next 2.5 to 3 years, that group of people had the highest employee satisfaction rate in the entire company.
Wow.
I never expected that. But if you think about it, they trusted me, I protected them, and I gave them a pathway to the future. They were loyal to this day. Some of them still send me a note on Boss's Day, and that's 20
Wonderful.
years ago.
Wow. That's one heck of a legacy, Jim. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable about that story. And as you say, it is very real. I could feel the reality as you spoke about that experience. In terms of what is happening now on the world stage, how would you compare your six pillars of effective leadership to other leadership styles and conduits that may be out there uh, trying to grab the attention of leaders all over?
I would like to hit some of them over the head with my book and tell them to read the chapter on integrity, quite honestly. Um,
Okay.
I think in some areas around the world, I'm concerned about some areas around the world, including here at home, and some of the behaviors of people that we've put entrusted to not only lead us but guide us and help us evolve. To me, leadership is an evolution, and it's not something you wake up today and it stops tomorrow. You're a
Hmm.
leader 24/7.
Yeah.
I tell people, somebody once asked me, so when do you start being a leader? When you sit down at your desk? The answer is no. When you step out of bed in the morning, it's 24/7. It's every interaction. It's when you get out of your car to walk into the office building or get off of mass transit to walk into the office building. Every interaction has got to be positive for you and the person on the other side. You've you have the opportunity to make somebody's day every single day, even if it's just with a warm smile. And so I would say to those leaders, we're trusting you. Don't lead us astray. We've put our trust in you. Now help us evolve in a
Yeah,
positive way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. I truly do like that. So let's look at it from an application of practicality. What would you say in terms of your experience that you have seen thus far can be some challenges for an organization or a high profile leader per se to fully understand and implement the six pillars of effective leadership?
I think if they struggle with integrity,
Hmm.
they'll have trouble with compassion and empathy.
Okay.
They have got to understand that integrity is really non-negotiable for
Right.
people. If you want the trust and support, I often put it this way too. If you were in the military and you had a leader, a general, a lieutenant, or whoever, you're committing to follow that person into battle because you trust that person's not going to get you harmed.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Integrity is what gives people that trust. It's integrity helps people become loyal and compassionate about their work, and especially if they know that you understand them as an individual, and you know them, you know that their kids play soccer or their kids play football or or softball or whatever the athletic or whatever they do outside of work, that you're connected and you understand that. So on Monday you can say, hey Andy, how was the football game on Saturday? Is your daughter still a cheerleader? And you can relate to them, and you don't have to be best friends, but you have to understand their life outside of work in order to understand how to help motivate them at work.
Mm. All right. So I get the impression that you prefer to have a greater emphasis or focus on integrity and empathy. Am I right there, Jim?
That's a good assumption. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then looking at it from this perspective, let's just imagine that a leader has these two qualities, but he lacks the rest. How do we address that situation? Because let's just imagine further that he has a desire to be more effective and he calls you in. And you see, I'm asking this because we come from so many different backgrounds, Jim, and we have challenges based on how we were grown in terms of the culture at home, epigenetics, you know, all the ecosystems that surround us. We have all these things going with us, and we may be able to develop one or two effective communication or leadership strategies or skills. But what if we struggle with the rest? How do we help them?
So what I would do is create a an action plan or roadmap. And
Okay.
so I would say, Andy, if it was me and I was mentoring you, I would say, you do, Andy, you do integrity, you've got integrity, you do it well. I've seen evidence of your empathy. If we look at the additional four pillars, which one do you think you need most? Because
Ah,
that'll be the first one we're going to focus on.
right.
And then work through each one of them. Because for you, the order may be one thing, but for another person, it may be, I have integrity, I have empathy, but I don't know how to use humor as a
Mm,
leader.
yeah.
And so then I would say to them, well, it's not about making you a comedian, but it's about using humor. And the way I use humor is to diffuse tense situations or situations of conflict between people. And a lot of times I use self deprecating humor against myself, stupid things that I've
Mhm.
done. I've done enough
Yeah.
stupid things and crazy things in my life. I have a lot that I can relate to.
Yeah.
But I use it in such a way that it causes people to relax
Okay.
and to get refocused. And so everybody's roadmap is different. And so I think that's why I say integrity is non negotiable, but the rest can be implemented in any order.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Jim. What does the future look like for you with regards to another publication, maybe, or further emphasizing on how people can maintain their effective leadership, maybe building on the six pillars? I don't know. What does the future look like for you, Jim?
So I've started to think about what the next book would look like, but I do have to
Mm-hmm.
say that when I
Mm-hmm.
finished this book, finished writing the six pillars, my wife and I were out to dinner with some close friends. And my friends asked me what I was going to write about next.
Yeah.
And as I started to respond, my wife took the time to take over the conversation and said, "There will not be a second book. I have not seen my husband in 12 months. Every
Oh
night
my.
he's in his office writing. Every night he's talking to an editor on the West Coast. Every night I'm sitting alone by the television." So there is
Mm.
going to be another book, but it probably isn't going to be immediate, Andy.
Yeah.
But it will either be, I like the path that you started to suggest. It will either be, how do I maintain those six pillars? Or it
Mm-hmm.
may be, what are the next three or four things that have evolved and become important in the world? Because in my view, leaders are developed and the development of a leader never ends. You are always learning. And I often think back to my first management job. And when I think about how I lead today versus that first job, I can't believe I survived it. I'm surprised people didn't throw me through the window. I was horrible
Wow.
as a leader, horrible. So this is my opportunity to give back, to help other people so they're not like I was at the very beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Now, in terms of work life balance for effective leadership, you mentioned, and rightly so, that the minute you get up off your bed in the morning, you are starting or continuing the process of being a leader. But how does one have a good work life balance? Or is it necessary so that one does not overflow and affect the other? In other words, when I'm at home, yes, I'm a leader still, but I do focus on being the best possible husband, father, mentor to my children, protector, provider. But when I'm at work or I'm doing business, I'm into that full tilt of leadership role. Many struggle with it. How can we help them strike that healthy balance?
I think it's important to have that. In fact, just yesterday, my wife and I celebrated our 34th wedding anniversary. Um,
Wow.
that's
Congratulations,
pretty
Jim.
significant. But I think it's important. So, what I like about the six pillars is it's not just about being a leader at work.
Thank you. Okay, so we were looking at the work life balance with regards to effective leadership and also being the effective mother, brother, father, as the case might be, the domestic role that you play. Yeah?
Yes, sir. And so for me, I think I give, we have three grown children and all have been successful in life. And they wouldn't have been successful if it wasn't for my wife's focus on educating them and training them and being there every day. Because there were a lot of weeks that I was traveling for work, because as a leader, you're not always in the same place week after week.
Yeah.
I did pride myself on never missing a birthday. Now, my son corrected me, my middle child son corrected me because he said I missed his 13th birthday. I didn't miss his birthday party, but he is correct. The day of his birthday, I was not home, I was traveling. And he still reminds me of that, that I missed one birthday. But the other two children have not accused me of that. But if that's the worst thing I get blamed for, I think then that we've done a good job as parents. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Jim. How can folks get a copy? I know that on the flyer there we had Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. Are there any other distributors of the book?
Um, it is on Lulu and it is on another site, and it's going up on Google, but they can also get it directly from my website or by reaching out to me. So if they want to go to
Okay.
my website, which is just jimcarlough.com, they can get a book off of the website there. There's a way to order it directly from the website, or they can simply fill out the contact me form and check the box that I'd like a copy of the book, and we'll make arrangements to get them a copy of the book.
Yeah. So as you may see, I have put some of your stuff up there so they can also follow. And as you said, the most efficient one would be the first one, which is your website. Yeah. Great.
Yes, sir.
So here's the thing, Jim. With regards to leadership in sports, looking at coaches, managers of football teams, coaches of basketball teams, whatever the sport is, how can any of your six pillars, if all maybe, can help them to be more effective in terms of leadership? Because just being a coach or a manager means you are in automatically a leadership position. You have the leadership of 12, 22, whatever the size of the teams are. How can your technique and your publication help them to be more efficient and effective as leaders in that arena as well?
I think the same principles apply. When
Hmm.
you think of the best leaders or coaches that are there, regardless of sport, they they all care about their teammates, or they care about their team. They care
Yeah.
about their people. It's no different than a business leader. Now,
Okay.
and when they go to practice every day, if they know that Jim has a hurt back, they've got to show some compassion for the fact that he can't practice today. But that doesn't mean Jim isn't there and participating in some activity or something because he's part of that team. So I think the pillars actually have universal appeal regardless. I've taught at a couple. I've not taught. I've presented my book at two universities recently, and the response from the students was actually, I was pretty impressed with the level of maturity of the students and the openness of them to share some of their stories about leaders they've already met in working part time, and unfortunately, how horrible some of them were.
Mm,
But I think I've also spoken to a teacher organization who thought that the pillars also apply to teachers. So
mm.
teachers and coaches, I think, can still benefit from some or all of the pillars, and adapt them for their individual world.
Yeah, this has been an engaging and informative episode. The six pillars of effective leadership with Jim Carlough. And you've been hearing him speak so passionately about the way in which we can implement these pillars in all areas and aspects of our lives. As we're about to wrap up, we are coming to the end of this episode. What would you say in closing, Jim? What would be your parting statement with regards to the six pillars of effective leadership?
One of the things I do talk about in the book is journaling, reflecting on
Mm-hmm.
what you write, but
Yeah.
also mentoring. And
All right.
I'm a strong believer in having mentors. And
Okay.
I I would suggest, if you are wanting to get into leadership or evolve into leadership, or if you're already there, you should always have a mentor or a coach that's not your manager, that you can
Mm,
run ideas by or have discussions with or collaborate on things that are impacting you potentially at work. I
okay.
think when we all look around, we all hear about the challenges we have across the world with mental health issues. Having a mentor, to have somebody just to talk to about a business idea or concept, it, it's just great to be able to have somebody in a non-threatening environment give you feedback. And so I suggest everyone, whether you buy and read the book or implement the book, please pursue having a mentor. You will never regret that.
Yeah, absolutely right. I agree with that 100 and more percent. Thank you so much. You have been a wonderful and engaging guest, Jim Carlough. You've heard it there, people. Please check out his website. You can see there on the screen. And we thank him for taking the time to spend with us as he spoke about his publication, The Six Effective Pillars, or the Six Pillars of Effective Leadership. So until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development on Transactional Conversations, the place for intentionality, clarity, and purpose, together with my guest Jim Carlos, saying so long, Godspeed, and in all that you're doing, seek to always be the better person so that eventually you can become the best that you can be. Bye for now. Until next time.